was thinking after I was 21, which was March after Shoghi Effendi's passing, that I would apply for a pilgrimage. I was a film actor at that time, and the previous 2 years had been very emotionally connected to returning pilgrims. We were all waiting to see who the next pilgrim coming back, what the Guardian was saying, and so on. I remember Florence Mabry came back and said that the Guardian was very concerned with the American home front, that it was depleted, and that more people should have arisen for the crusade than arose. And from Southern California, he was hoping for a veritable exodus of Baha'is out to the foreign fields. So we're constantly thinking about that. Then the summer of 1957 was particularly significant. The Guardian had sent Mr. Khadem, the hand of the cause, your father, to visit the summer schools and speak about the covenant, the greater covenant and the local covenant. And you might say to yourself, well, why that particular time? But you remember the June 4th, 1957 message of the Guardian, where he talks about the coming conflicts of the forces of light and darkness and so on. Behind that is, in the spring of 57, Ahmad Sohrab came to the Holy Land and was very aggressively saying things. Had a called a press conference in Tel Aviv, and as the secretary of Abdul Baha, coming back to visit the Holy Land. And one of the members of the press said, but isn't there a will that appoints Shoghi Effendi as the Guardian? Isn't he the head of the faith? And he said, yes. He said, but he hasn't done a very good job. Then he went on to Haifa and he stirred up the covenant breakers to make a law case against the Guardian about the properties, that they should own the shrine and everything else. He was causing a lot of trouble. So the Guardian didn't announce any of that. A little bit in some of the messages, but not very much. But then he was using the hands to prepare the believers to understand again the covenant. And the way the covenant had been introduced to some of the young people that came into the cause when I came into the cause was very kind of spooky. I mean, in the sense that they said that if you're in a city with a covenant breaker, their breath poisons the air. And then one of the old ladies in the meeting said, and there's one lives near you. Scared me to death. And I didn't want to know about the subject. I couldn't imagine anybody going against the Lord of Hosts and his plan and so on. So I was skittish on the subject. And then I heard Mr. Khadem was coming. And then I heard he was going to talk about the covenant. I said, okay, I've got to try to listen. So I went, and he told this history of covenant breaking down through the different religions and the consequences and so on. So that was quite revealing and calmed me down. And we were also grateful, and he inspired us with all kinds of stories about the Guardian. Met with the youth under the big tree and told us we should memorize the Igon, which at the time was totally startling to us. Anybody could think of memorizing a whole book. And I had wonderful conversations with Mr. Khadem, and then offered my services with a car. I was free because I was between jobs in Los Angeles. He was going to Los Angeles. He had a number of things he needed to do there, so I made myself available and drove him around to he and your mother, to different places. Quite interesting in itself, and took him to a movie studio where he watched part of a movie being made. And so after he left, then I wrote the Guardian, and I sent a small contribution on behalf of the youth that we were also grateful that Mr. Khadem had come, and thank you for sending Mr. Khadem, and that I'm hoping to pioneer and so on. Short letter, and I said, please don't take time to answer this. So I didn't put a return address. And I sent it off, and that was October, late September, early October of 57. And then I didn't hear anything back the whole month. And I thought, oh, I said don't answer, so that's what's happened, you know. Then the Guardian passed away. Well, that was an event to be described in itself. I mean, it just shook everything. And this first cable came from Recollections saying that the Guardian is desperately ill following Asiatic flu. Well, he recovered from the flu, but desperately was a pretty strong word. Why was she telling us that? I looked up desperately in the dictionary. It said, beyond all hope. I said, he's gone. That was when I knew he was gone. Then the cable came about his passing just an hour later. What a consternation. Anyway, that was that. 2 weeks later, they called me from the Los Angeles Baha'i Center. They said, there's a letter here from the Holy Land for you. For me? I said, no, it must be some mistake. And they said, no, it's here. Come and collect it. So I went and collected it. And it was dated 4 or 5 days before the Guardian's passing. Written by Leroy Ios. He said the Guardian thanked for the contribution, and he also significantly said, and after not very long letter after it, he said that the Guardian is praying that you will be confirmed to lead many seeking souls to eternal life. And then there was a receipt for the amount with the Guardian, signed by the Guardian, after he's gone to the other world. I thought that was very interesting. And I finally got to the Pioneer Field the following July. I landed in Nicaragua in '58. One of the sad events of that time, it was wonderful but sad also, was the meeting, the Continental Conference called by Shoghi Effendi. He called for that series during October and named additional hands of the cause and so on. So that those conferences took place, but we all went. Maybe you were there yourself, I don't know, in Chicago. Dr. Jikari was the representative of the Guardian at the conference. I remember that, I think it was Mr. Hawley was at the platform. He said, friends, please, the representative of Shoghi Effendi has arrived. And I was in the back of the hall. He came in, he walked down, everyone stood, everyone wept. And he said, I'm here, but I have no message. Friends, but he brought the original of the victories of the midpoint of the crusade, and he displayed that there, and it was so beautiful. And Mr. Hawley was there. And it was maybe a year later that I received a letter from him. I was in this rainforest town in Nicaragua, isolated from everything and alone, and I got this beautiful letter from your father. He had been to Guardian's resting place. He said he'd been praying for me there and wishing me success, and wrote, it was a lovely long letter. And I was so grateful that he took the time to write that to me. And then time passed. I think we had to exchange once or twice of letters. And then he arranged for me to travel, because I was living with Indians and teaching Indians. He arranged for me to travel across Canada to meet the Indian Baha'is in different places, the hands he had under the hands, in 1960. And again in 1961, again in the summer, he called me to the States to do the same thing. And I was in touch with him at the different work and meeting tribal heads and things. And there's such a prejudice against white people on the part of the Indians, but the fact that I was coming and bringing greetings from Indian Baha'is from Central America opened all the doors. I met the heads of the Hopi chiefs, and miraculous things happened, wonderful things happened. I remember one place we were in Canada, and one of the friends had arranged a translator, and we were in a car going out to a new tribe uh, further north than they had been. They were having quite good success with the teaching work there, amongst the Soto Indians mostly. And we came on this dirt path that we were on, we came to a fire coming towards us, a grass fire. So the driver says, look, the grass fire is not a big fire, it's a fire just in the front. So either we can pass through it or we have to turn around and it's coming this way, we'll have to go back. So what shall we do? So we consulted a little bit and we said, let's rush through it. So we drove through this fire. And I would get to the other side and there's this long path and big open field, all burnt now. And there was a tall Indian man with a big hat standing in the road way ahead. So we drove up to him and he said, I knew you would come, he said, and I want to hear your message. Okay, that's fine, that's what we're here about. So we went to his house and we talked about the message. And he said, I'm the counselor for the tribe here. And this is a very important message, but he said, we never do anything, you have to consult the spirit. So I'll consult the spirit. We're sitting in a circle in his small house. And he started chanting, and beautiful in his native language. And then tears started coming down his face. He says, it's true, he said. I am a Baha'i. And my wife in the corner, she's a Baha'i too. She never spoke to anything, but he brought her along. And then he excused himself. I have to go tell my people about this message. He excused himself, and we went on to another tribe. But I mean, events like that, and your father's spirit was like right there the whole time. That was 61, 62, okay. That 61, the assemblies were elected. I was elected to the National Assembly of Nicaragua. And in 63, I was able to go to the Holy Land to the convention of the election of the first house. I was, 27 years old, so I was the only one that had the means to go from Nicaragua. I had those means because of my wife's mother, who contributed, and my own non-Baha'i mother contributed for me to go. So it's nice. And I went there, and then I saw Mr. Khadem and all the other hands that some of them who I met and knew. I knew Dr. Jakari by then, of course. And at one point towards the end of the few days that we were there, Mr. Khadem took me aside and he said, now, in the case of Mrs. So-and-so in Guatemala, I don't think we should push her, I think we should just leave her alone. Leave her alone. And then he went on with something else. And I'm thinking, why is he telling me this? That's 2 countries away from where I live, and it's a protection matter. Now, the hands had already asked us to go to South America to replace massive COMC in Bolivia, and we'd said yes, because we were so sick with the tropical parasites and things that I thought we're never going to survive. The doctor said, don't go back to the rainforest again, you're getting sicker and sicker, and I weighed about 58 kilos, and it was really serious. So replacing Masu Kamsi as pioneers, we understood, but it was actually replacing him as a protection board member under your father's direction. So then I had these letters from him as we were moving towards South America, on different subjects. And so many times before I get a letter from him, the night before I would have a dream of the guardian or of something significant. It was so interesting, such a connection. Wow. With his promise of prayers and his presence there. And this was a very difficult time. Shortly after we got to Bolivia, the chairman of the NSA broke the covenant, followed Remy and asked Remy for money. It was a very dramatic period. I was assigned as a protection board member 5 countries. 4 countries had covenant breaking alive at the time. I remember the hands wrote to Holy Land about these and what I was doing, meeting the people and trying to solve the problems. Without any, he said, they wrote back and said, don't you have somebody older that has some experience? And they wrote back and said, no, there's nobody to send. So I learned that I was, kind of born in fire, traveling a lot. Yeah.
And then what happened thereafter? You went to the Holy Land to serve
that was the period of 5 years as a board member. And then they had something called the executive board member that was training to do the work of the hands. And I was an executive board member for South America. In South America at that time, there were a few of us. Mr. Khaze was there, the hand of the gods. Mr. Khaze had come to take residence in South America. He was there, I don't know, five years or more. And then the announcement in '68 came appointing the boards of counselors. And they created an independent board of counselors for South America. There were, at that time there were, I think originally 11 boards and then 13 boards in the world. I'd been serving for the whole Western Hemisphere and then counselor then for South America. In 70, that was 68, and after those 5 years, the counselors were invited to the Holy Land for the convention in 73. And also there, some of the hands were giving hints to me. They weren't saying anything, but they were saying, well, I'll see you either in South America or here in the Holy Land. So what's going on? I was also a little nervous with that. But I went on pilgrimage to Iran for some weeks. And then the announcement was made by the House appointing the new teaching center, establishing the teaching center, and I was among the 3 counselors that were appointed to that. So I went back to the Holy Land then. And
members were Florence Mabry and Aziz Yazdi and you, plus the Hands of the Cause.
Plus 4 Hands of the Cause.
Plus 4 Hands of the Cause.
As the nucleus in the Holy Land. But all the Hands of the Cause were members, so whenever they came, they sat in our sessions. Some would come and go. And then in 73 and 78, 5 years later, the Hands had their last conclave. And I think there were maybe 18 hands. And they said, you're doing the work with us, so the 3 of you should come to the conclave. So we sat in the conclave of the Hands for 3 days. That was amazing to hear all the diversity of views and strong feelings, and they were quite completely honest. No hesitation in front of us. So they made some recommendations, I think, to the House, but mainly they were trying to understand what was going on. Yeah. So it's
1978.
challenging. The board members, the auxiliary boards had been given to the counselors, and then the Hands had been made international officials of the faith, so they were traveling internationally whenever they could. After some initial meetings, went to South America to collect our things and collect Maryland and come to the Holy Land. And I think you know the rest of the story. It's a long time in the Holy Land. 15 years on the teaching center until I was elected to the House. And after that, 22 years on the House.
Until your retirement in?
2010, yeah.
You met many Hands of the Cause, of course, and you spent some considerable time with one Hand of the Cause being Enoch Balinga.
Yes.
Is there anything you could share with us on?
Well, this is just an extraordinary soul. And he was full of good humor, and he had amazing understanding of the faith and of the practice, the way Abdu'l-Baha addressed audiences of different character. he'd studied that very carefully after he was with Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi Effendi said he had to master Abdu'l-Baha's, the style of Abdu'l-Baha's talks in the West. And he really mastered it. It was extraordinary. And on the basis of that, we'd give different kinds of talks to different groups. And his knowledge and understanding of what he was saying was profound and equal or superior to all the other hands I've ever heard speaking and teaching. Of course, you don't know, they have lots of insight they don't always bring out, but from my experience with Mr. Olinga, he was a terrific servant of the cause. Abu Futu, the Guardian, called him after, in the first year as a Knight of Baha'u'llah in the Cameroon, he brought 100 people to the faith, and just made the Guardian very happy. Oh, he said he spoke to him about all kinds of things. Yeah, he mentioned that Abdu'l-Baha had said that this was the hell of the planets, of these planets, nearby planets. This is the most backward one. And then Mr. Olinga said that it was a little startling to hear that, and Shoghi Effendi looked at me, he said, they still make war. They kill each other. Creatures that have been made, I think by God, Abdu'l-Baha says, he provides for all, he's given us a place to live with some cooperation. There's plenty for everybody to be comfortable, prepare themselves spiritually for the next life, which is the purpose of existence. And instead of that, they mass land and money and armaments, and it's just most backward. He said their civilization's far, far superior to our own, even on near planets. We don't know which ones he's talking about, but he also mentioned that a manifestation of the God would appear in the future to unite the whole solar system, our solar system, into one civilization. So you see this pattern moving up, you wonder what happens after that, It's speculation in the future.
These are the words of Shoghi Effendi. Okay.
Yes, as repeated firsthand from Mr. Olinga. So on several occasions he talked about that. Okay. One of the goals of the World Crusade was to translate Baha'i literature into the Miskito Indian language of Nicaragua. Well, this was pretty remote. They lived in a very remote area. There were no cities or towns. And I made an expedition out there with one of the first Miskito Indians, a powerful guy. We went out onto what was Rio Coco on modern maps, but called the Huanqui River in Nicaragua, and stayed with a family out there. This man had done some translations for the evangelists, and we were able to translate prayers and some of the basic Baha'i teachings into Miskito there. And I remember during that visit, exhausted and not feeling too strong, but I had a dream, and in the dream I was sitting at a table overlooking the river, the Huanqui River, translating, and came to something that I couldn't, what word can we use for that? And then a head came over my shoulder and said, such and such a word. Try this word. And I looked, it was Shoghi Effendi. So then I thought to myself, oh, Shoghi Effendi, I have two wishes that just came spontaneously to me. One, I wanted to hear him chant a prayer. So immediately he walked to overlooking the river, and he chanted this beautiful prayer, and I was able to hear how his devotions. And then I said the other thing I wanted to see him together with Rio Coco. It's just curious to know that. So she appeared, and they looked in each other's eyes with such devotion that immediately I said, oh, I have to get married. That was the start of my a few months later I was married. When I was a new Baha'i, one of the pilgrims came back and she said, I'm a very practical minded person. She said, I don't get all, teary about shrines and things like that. You have to do useful things here in this world. And it frightened me to death. I thought, can I go to the Holy Land and not feel anything in the shrines? I was so worried about it. And a few days later, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was a pilgrim in the pilgrim house, in the round room, not the one where the house met for so many years, but the other end of the building. And I was on my bed, sitting there, and there's kind of, in dreams sometimes you have this, you might call it the meta consciousness, where your consciousness encompasses everything around you. It encompassed the shrine, and the guardian was in the shrine, and I was feeling now, sitting on the bed and feeling his presence in the shrine, and then he started to chant. He chanted a few verses, and then, I don't know how to explain, like 1,000 voices of the concourse answered him. I could hear that. As soon as I heard those sounds, my spirit came out of my body and was going like a ribbon up in the dome of that particular room. Both those rooms had domes. And I was so ecstatic with hearing that and the connection of the guardian one. So I knew I was going to feel something when I went to the shrine. And the door opened, and this lady stuck her head in. The lady that had the said, you have to be practical. And I fixed faucets and I did things like, and I was embarrassed for her to see me with such an experience. So the spirit came down, and the body fell on the floor, and they came together, and she looked, and you're on the floor, what are you on the floor? And she shut the door again. That was the end of the dream. And later, my office was right there in that room.
What a lovely dream. Amazing.
I remember your father had said that when Shoghi Effendi chanted, his shoulder moved, kind of in a way, such a power coming into him. And that was in that dream also.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
All the friends have stories they can tell.
That's wonderful.
The essential thing is the study of the writings. The guardian said 2 essential actions: study and teaching. The study makes the teaching effective. If we're just, we say we trust in the spirit, okay, maybe we're inspired, but if we are studying, we're thinking about the faith, and our consciousness is expanding as we read the verses and study and think about them. It's just really essential, feeding ourselves every day, immerse ourselves in the ocean of the revelation. And after I said that, now I'm traveling so much, I hardly take time to study, and my words are exceeding my deeds, so I'm in trouble.
We are in London, England, and this is a wonderful opportunity to talk to the ex-member of the House of Justice, Mr. Hooper Dunbar. Thank you so much.